When you have your girls, you're never alone. You get together for coffee, maybe to work out, or just to laugh. We created Hey Girl, just for you. Can't wait for you to join us.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Hey Girl. I'm your girl Kim with an E, and this is episode 93. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, I want to remind you that Hey Girl is a safe space where you can share your experiences and be affirmed. Let's face it, life can be complex and sometimes overwhelming. That's why we believe in the power of conversation, because knowing we're not alone is what will help us get through. And I'm so glad you're here today and that I'm not alone today. Welcome to another episode. Welcome. Come on in and say hello to me in the comments. Let me know that you are here. And if you are here, I would love it if you would like, follow, and share this live with all of your friends. Wow, guys, it's February already and Black History Month. Yay. So happy Black History Month to all of you. We are kicking off, of course, a brand new theme today, and it is Black Girl Magic. I am going to have so much fun with this, and I think we all will, because we are honoring not just Black history this month, but we are honoring Black women in particular. So Hey Girl is all about inspiring and empowering women, but because of the theme this month, because of Black History Month, we are in particular highlighting the experiences of Black women and being inspired by their stories. So I'm excited for this theme and I'm excited for you to be here. Hey, Julia, welcome. So glad that you're with us. Guys, be sure to say hello in the comments and be sure to like, follow, and share this live. So last month, we talked about writing the vision. How did you guys do with that? How did you enjoy the episodes that we had last month? Were you inspired to write your vision? Hopefully the answer is yes. If it is yes, say so in the comments. And we're going to continue on, just building on that now with this month's theme. By the way, if you have missed any past episodes, whether you missed the episodes last month or even prior to that, if you're interested in seeing previous episodes of this show, I want to make sure you know how to do that. Right here on our page, you will see that we have all of the videos collected under the heading for each month's theme. So if you just go to the page and go to videos and keep scrolling down, you can see each month's theme that we have had going back from the very beginning, and you can click on any one of those and watch them again. So wanted to make sure that you know that that is there. Certainly, if you have someone who you want to share today's live with, you can direct them to our page so they can see it later as well. And, we also have our YouTube page, so you can send them to our YouTube and they can also get these past episodes there. I know some people don't really care for Facebook, so I also tell them that they don't have to come to Facebook if they don't want to. We're also on YouTube and they can find the past episodes right there as well. Well, oh man, I don't have my copy with me, but I just wanted to remind all of you, there you go. There is the, Amanda, keep scrolling the YouTube while I run and get my book, but I want everyone to see the YouTube channel where we can, oh, that's the other Kim. So there it is. I just saw it. Yes, there we go. You can find the past episodes right there as well. Okay, I'm back and I want to make sure also I finally got my own copy, guys. So you probably know this book came out several weeks ago, but even I had to wait for my copy to come in and it finally came in. I don't know why it took so long. I think Amazon was playing with my life, but I hope that you have picked up your copy of Trust the Process, How Writing Can Help You Get Unstuck. As you know, this was the vision that I had to write. As we were talking about that last month, this was my thing that I had to just get over the hump and do, and praise God. He allowed me to get it done, and it is finally here. It's crazy that it's finally real and in my hands. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling to finally get your first book out. But more importantly, I hope that you all will be blessed by it. And of course, you can get either the paperback version or the ebook if you go to Amazon. And we'll put that link in the comments so that you can access it if you haven't already. So who's here? Guys, say hello in the comments. Let me know that you are here, and let me know if you picked up your book yet. And I'm hoping that you have and that you are being blessed by it. I also want to be sure to remind you to check out our weekly newsletter. And in the newsletter, I offer you advice and motivation and inspiration. I give you a sneak peek into who we will have on the show coming up. And I try to provide additional resources to you, downloadables, and things that you can use. So be sure to sign up if you haven't already. We'll put that link in the comments as well. And now that we are in the month of February, we have the February calendar out there as well for you to download and create a desktop background on your computer. It has a very great quote by Toni Morrison, which is very inspiring. She's one of my favorite Black authors, and I think it's kind of pretty. So if you're interested in getting that, just sign up for the newsletter and we'll make sure you get your February calendar for your desktop. Also, don't forget to go to justkim.net because that is the website where you can get information about the book. You can check out the Hey Girl store. There's lots of things there as well. You can also sign up for the newsletter through the website. So justkim.net is the place to go. Okay, so I know Julia is there. Hi, Auntie Carol. Hey, girl. So glad to see you. Welcome, and be sure to share today's live and invite all your friends to join us. It's going to be a great conversation. So what I need you all to do in the comments for me really quick. Of course, this month's theme is Black Girl Magic. So as I say that, who in your life or someone that maybe isn't in your life but you see from afar, would you say inspires you? What Black woman do you think of when you hear that phrase, Black Girl Magic? Who inspires you? Put that person's name in the comments. I would love to know who the women are that you see as really exemplifying this theme. So share if you would, please. As I said, today's theme, being Black Girl Magic, may be problematic for some. And I want to acknowledge that although we are talking about this idea of Black Girl Magic and Black women having a certain power to just overcome, I want to also acknowledge that phrase can also be a burden on Black women because it sets up this expectation that we're strong Black women and therefore we cannot show weakness. And I want to make sure that I send the message this month that that's not actually what we are trying to do here. We are not saying that Black Girl Magic is actually some magical thing that we have access to that no one else does, and we will never be weakened or show weakness. Instead, what that phrase means to me is that we have a particular and unique history of overcoming challenges. And it's the way that we have done that I want to talk about. And at the same time acknowledge that it's not always easy and that we aren't always strong. And we indeed do not have to be. So I want to make sure that we are not setting ourselves up for undue stress and burden because we feel as though we have to live up to this idea of having Black girl magic. And I think that we will really see that shine through in the ladies that we talked to this month because they have done amazing things. They are indeed strong Black women, but it's not to say that they haven't struggled. So with all of that said, allow me to introduce our guest for today, someone who I admire and look up to greatly, Dr. Valerie Lee. She is a scholar in the truest sense of the word. She is a full professor at the Ohio State University, tenured in English with courtesy appointments in comparative studies, women's gender and sexuality studies, the Center for Folklore Studies, the Center for Interdisciplinary Law and Policy Studies, and the Department of African American and African Studies. In addition to teaching a wide range of undergraduate and graduate courses and authoring a textbook, the Prentice Hall Anthology of African American Women's Literature, Dr. Lee holds the lone distinction of having chaired 3 different Ohio State academic units: the Department of English, the Department of Women's Studies, and the Department of African American and African Studies. She has won numerous awards for her teaching and service to the university, and in 2015, she retired as Ohio State's Vice Provost for Diversity and Inclusion. Vice President for Outreach and Engagement, and Chief Diversity Officer. Wow. Dr. Lee is a wife and mother of four who lives in Columbus, Ohio with her husband of 45 years, James, and I'm thrilled to welcome her to Hey Girl. Woo! Hey girl.
Hi, and congratulations on your book. I love the title, Trust the Process.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It was a process just getting it done, and so I'm as excited to have it out as anybody. Hey, Toya Burton Poplar, I see you there in the comments. Love that you are here with us today. And Dr. Lee, wow, I mean, what an amazing career that you have had, and I'm just honored to know you. I must say that I don't know if you remember or not, but you were one of the people who I spoke to when I was working on my terminal degree, and I was in a place of just utter discouragement and defeat and overwhelm. I was like, I cannot do this. And you were like, yeah, you're fine. Just keep going. Just keep doing. Just
Yes,
going. You're fine. Do you remember that?
I remember that call. And as a senior scholar, I knew it was my responsibility to make sure that I assured you that, of course, you can do this, because we all have those moments when we start to question whether we can actually finish our degrees and everything. But I knew you had it in you. And so you finished in fine form.
Oh man, I needed that kick in the butt because you were not sympathetic. You were like, girl, you're fine. Just you can do it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've seen so many.
You didn't even entertain the negative talk. You were like, nope.
Of course not. Of course not. You don't go that far and not finish.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So, thank you, Toya. I see your congrats in the comments. I appreciate that. Oh, Dr. Lee, we got to show our mugs. We got to show our cute
oh,
mugs. So I have my Hey Girl mug. Y'all don't forget. And then she has hers. So cute. We're going to talk
yes.
about the book in just a little bit. So cheers. Yeah, so this is her latest book, Sister Locking Discourse. We're going to get to that. But first, I want to begin with those early years because we just heard your bio. We know you're a boss, but you weren't always, right? You also had to start somewhere. And I'm curious first what you imagined your life would be when you were young, when you were going, starting
Mhm.
school or trying to figure out what your path was going to be. Um, what did you imagine then? And how does where you are now compare to where you thought you would go when you were first starting out?
Where did I imagine I would be? I always knew from the time I was 5 or 6 years old that I wanted to teach. I knew that. I can still see in my imagination, I can still see my mother ironing clothes, and cut she used some cardboard and she cut up all the letters of the alphabet and she set them out in front of me. And it was right before I started school. I looked at those 26 letters and I pulled the letters FAB, fab, because that was the detergent. Everybody who's as old as I am will remember that there was a detergent called fab. And from that time, and looking at words and looking at language, and what happened was every grade that I was in, that was the grade that I wanted to teach. So when I was in the first grade, I just knew I was going to be a first grade teacher. When I was in the third grade, I was going to be a third grade teacher. When I
Right.
was in the sixth grade, on and on and on. And then I went to college. And so I did not imagine that I could become a college professor until the head of the Department of English at the college where I went told me that, you could teach on the college level. I was so
Mm.
happy to hear that because all I wanted to do was to teach literature. And then I ended up teaching mostly graduate studies, which isn't surprising since I always wanted to teach wherever I was. So I had not
Mhm.
imagined that I would become a college professor because I didn't know any African American college
Mm.
professors, male
Mhm.
or female. But
Mm.
I love literature, and I loved going to school, and so I had this love for language and reading. I can still remember the very first set of books that I read that had chapters. It was something called Danny Dunn and the Homework Machine. I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I thought that was really great. And then I read all of the Nancy Drew series. I don't know if you even
I
remember Nancy.
loved Nancy Drew. Yes. Yes,
Yes,
I grew up on her.
well, I grew up on Nancy Drew too, and I can still see the clue in the diary, and
Yes.
the other ones like the mystery of Lilac Inn, all of these really good uh, Nancy Drew. So I always loved to read, and I remember when the library near me first opened to African American
Mm.
persons. And that was a big deal for me because I just read all of the junior and early teen books. So I'm a reader.
Mm. Yeah. And so you knew you wanted to teach early on
Yes.
something, regardless of what it was. So where did you begin in your teaching? How did that come to be?
Where did I begin in my teaching? I taught my first college classes when I was just 22 or 23 years old, and I was a graduate teaching
Hmm.
assistant at the Ohio State University. And that's
Mm.
how we're supposed to refer to it, as the Ohio State University.
Yes, I noticed that.
So, yes. So
Okay.
I was
So you,
teaching composition then.
okay. Yeah, yeah. And so talk us through what your, did you assume that you would just always be a professor in the classroom, or did you have some idea even then that you might eventually move on from there and do administrative work? Or did you just kind of see yourself as one who would always be in the classroom?
I saw myself as someone who would always be in the classroom because the classroom was
Mhm.
where I always wanted to be. And even after I became an administrator, whenever I had the opportunity to enter a classroom, I would be energized. So no, I didn't
Mm.
think in terms. I don't think anyone wakes up early in their life, when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, and they say, I want to be a higher education administrator. Oh, no. No, I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a
Yeah,
teacher. So
yeah.
the imagination came when others saw that skill within me. But no, I was not, oh, I want to
Mhm.
be an administrator.
Yeah,
But I'm
yeah. But what?
but I'm glad I became one. And we can talk about that later when we talk about the book.
Yes, we will definitely do that. So I know what it's like to try to balance being a wife and a mother and a professional. And I also know about teaching English, which requires a lot heavier grading load than teaching other subjects. So tell me, first of all, what is it that you love so much about teaching English? And then also, how did you balance those responsibilities, considering that, a lot of the work that you have to do comes home with you?
Yes, right. The grading of papers and everything. It's not easy because I wanted to be fair to all of my students. And I know that some people read students' papers and they just place a grade on the paper. And I wasn't
Mhm.
that kind of a professor. I always wanted to write at least a paragraph at the end to not simply place a grade on a paper, but convince
Mhm.
the student why I thought the student should receive that grade on the paper, because
Mhm.
fairness mattered a lot to me. So yes, it was a lot of work, but it was work that I enjoyed. I enjoyed
Mhm.
teaching literature because, as I said, because I love reading, I picked a profession where I could just read and read and read. Indeed,
Mhm.
even when I was teaching a class that I had taught before, I would reread those works that I was teaching so that when I
Mhm.
entered that classroom, I would still bring in the kind of energy that I wanted my
Mhm.
students to have as they were reading the text. So I always reread the text so that I would be reading those works with them.
Oh, good stuff. So, how were you received by your students and peers? Because you were a Black woman teaching in a predominantly white institution, right? What was that
Yes.
like?
Well, with my first job, I taught at a private liberal arts college where most of the students were quite wealthy. Most of them had gone to prep schools in the East. And I remember when I taught the first course on African American literature, I can remember every negative student evaluation I've ever received. I received
Mm,
one then and about a half of one later. Um, but that particular student said that I was teaching all of these writers who could not write. And I want you to know who I was teaching. I was
mhm,
teaching James Baldwin. I was teaching Richard Wright. I was teaching the short stories of Alice Walker. And I was teaching the early works, two of the early works of Toni Morrison. And to be
mhm.
these people did not have talent. And I was teaching the poetry of like Gwendolyn Brooks. And so that particular evaluation stayed with me a long time until I was able to process that this student really didn't know anything about those writers. She was reacting to the fact that here she had standing before her a black
Mhm.
woman teaching literature when she was coming out of a home that did not think that most blacks could read or write well. And so,
Yeah,
who was I to tell her that her papers should receive a B or a C when her
yeah,
white prep school teachers had told her that she was A material? So, you get those kinds of things.
yeah, yeah. And you were young teaching at that point. Did it affect you or shake your confidence being a new teacher and thinking, oh, maybe I'm not doing this right or not doing it well? Did it have that effect on you, or were you able to brush it off and recognize it for what it was?
Oh, I brushed it off, because all
Mhm.
the other evaluations were very good, and I worked at that university for 15 years. For 15 years, though, I was the only African American woman on tenure track. So there was some loneliness and isolation, but I had a number of good mentors there, and it went really well. I mean, I advanced all the way through all of the professorial ranks while I was there, so I brushed it off. You have to
Yeah.
know in life what should stay with you and what you need to brush off.
Yeah. What were the challenges though for you? Like, how were you able to still move up the ranks and be successful? I feel like there's some black girl magic happening there. Like, what did you do that overcame that you were able to overcome the resistance or the negativity if there was some? Because the assumption would be that, as you said, you would be a little bit isolated, you're different from everyone else. I imagine there must have been some resistance and challenges, but yet you were still able to progress. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I don't want to be immodest, but you need to be good at what you do so that you can earn respect. And
Uh,
and so in all areas of the profession, I was doing well. I was publishing journal articles. I made sure I got my first book out on time. I certainly was doing a lot of service. I was doing more service than my colleagues were.
Mhm.
I had served on over 13 different committees when I came up for tenure. And so if I was doing the research and I was doing the teaching and I was doing the service, and I had a very
Mhm.
supportive home environment. And that was very important, very
Mm.
important.
Yes. So I love what you said that you just did well and they couldn't deny what you were able
Right.
to accomplish. But I'm curious to know, do you feel that you had to, as we often do, worked, twice as hard in order to get that recognition?
Yes, I will admit that I had colleagues who did not work as hard and who were not as accomplished. But that was something I knew to expect because
Mhm.
so as African Americans, we see that happening and we're told from a very young age how we need to excel. So, yes, I didn't let it
Mhm.
get down at all
Mhm.
because my family, I had my church, I had my girlfriends, I had whatever you're
Mhm.
doing, you need to have a wider circle than just your professional identity. So that was
Mhm.
more professional identity. So whatever they were saying in the academy and whatever they were saying in higher education to me, I had other facets of my life that helped my,
Mhm.
so I didn't have it all invested in that just one area.
That's so good. I think that's so important. You were able to balance. You were able to balance because you had the balance of a strong family and church community,
Oh,
friendships that you weren't you didn't rely on what you were doing professionally for your whole self. And so with that, I want to go back to the family then. So
oh,
you're
okay.
a mother and a wife,
Yes,
right? So
yes.
what kind of support were you getting at home in order to show up the way you did at work?
My children were very supportive, very supportive. I took them to conferences with me sometime. I remember one conference, I was keynoting a conference on midwifery because one of the books I wrote was on African American women writers and granny midwives, and those were the people who delivered all of these babies, white and black, throughout the South. And so the conference was in Lake Tahoe, and so I took my oldest daughter there. Yes, the book Granny Midwives and Black Women Writers. So I took my older daughter to that conference, and to this day she remembers that. I took my second um older daughter to a conference with me in Tampa. I hope she remembers that, so that what I was
Mhm.
doing professionally was part of my personal life too. My children grew
Mhm.
up on college campuses, so
Mhm.
it was a situation where I either had to be a mother or a professor. It wasn't that
Mhm.
kind of split. And one of the things I've learned from reading African American women writers, for instance, Toni Cade Bambara, she talks about dangerous, wasteful splits that you have either in this category or in that category. But I think of my life as a coherent whole. And
Mhm.
so, yes, I was both a mother and a professor. And at the beginning of my book, the way I give thanks to my children is that I remember that they recognize that I was both. And so I just want to, on the dedication page, I say
Yes.
to Erica, my firstborn, nursed between classes and raised on a college campus. And I
Uh-huh.
actually I would teach a class and then run downhill to where the place was that they were taking care of the nursery school and nurse her. And to Jessica, who was so enamored by her kindergarten teacher that she quoted this teacher daily when I reminded her too that I too was a teacher. She burst out crying, "You're not a teacher, you're a mommy." And then I my twin sons, to Adam, who grew waist length dreadlocks, and when hearing that I was going to write something about hair, automatically heard Discourse as Discourse. And to
Mhm.
Andrew, who was so used to going throughout the neighborhood selling candy, popcorn, and holiday cards for his scouting troop, that when one of my books was published, asked if I wanted him to take the book house to house to sell. So my children were very much a part of my professional life and always
I
have
love,
been. So it worked
I
out
love
really.
that.
What a lot of people often ask me though is how in the world could I have done it to have this professional life with four children? Because when my oldest daughter was 4 and my other daughter was 2, that's when I gave birth to twin sons. So I
Mm.
had four children, 4 and under. That
Ah,
was hard, as you might
I
imagine.
I can't even imagine.
It was really hard. And when the doctor first told me that I was carrying twins, I did shed a few tears. And then I said, I can't have twins. I'm a professional woman. And he said, that has nothing to do with it. But my husband was very, very supportive. And so it's really good when you have a supportive husband. He,
Yes.
would take them to the pediatrician and to the soccer games and the basketball. So that helped. And
Yeah.
my whole family, because his mother, so my mother-in-law, she
Yes.
drove from Cleveland to Columbus on Sunday nights to take care of these four kids while I was
Mhm.
teaching. And then my
Wow.
mother took leave of absence from her job. A leave of absence is without pay. So she
Oh, wow.
helped me a whole year. I got to give a shout out to my sister who treated my children as if they were her children. And so, I had a lot of support. I didn't do it by myself. And plus, I
Yeah.
kept repeating to myself that text that says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me. If you say it enough, you say it
Mhm.
enough till you believe it.
Yes, indeed. Oh
So it was
my. That
difficult.
yes, that is ooh, that's a testimony right there. Because I can only imagine having two small children and then finding out you're about to have twins. I would probably be
Yeah.
laid out on the floor. Um, But indeed, what you share is what we all know, particularly is common in Black communities, that it takes a village. And you indeed had a village. You had your husband, you had your mother and mother-in-law, and I'm sure you had friends who were helpful. And so all of that made it possible. And I just think that's so rich. I think that's so rich because it just goes to show what is possible when you have a community of, a loving community, and they give you permission then to be your best self and to do your best work, which is exactly what you did. So I was going to ask you what were the early challenges, but you just laid them all out for us. So we
Well,
already
yes.
we already know. Um,
And I'm going to say
yeah,
some more about girlfriends too, because your program is called Hey Girl and all.
yeah.
I am very appreciative of especially the single girlfriends who helped me too, because once I had the four children, 4 and under, I actually had a chart where I asked them to sign up for what shift they were going to help me with, because I was so used to doing that in my profession. When we are hiring persons and we need our
Mhm.
colleagues to sign up to speak with them and to interview them. Well, I had my single girlfriends and they were signing up for shifts and everything. So, yes, it takes a lot of
Yeah.
people. And of course, when I went to church, there were so many people there who were willing to, oh, may we hold one of the babies? And my answer was always, yes, you might do that. I was
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Oh, thank God for good friends. So, yes, we often talk on this show about the sister circle, and we say over and over again how important it is to surround yourself with women who are there for you, to support you, that are in your corner, to encourage you, and we need to be doing that for one another, certainly. Last year on this show during this month, we talked about Black women and beauty, and we had some conversations about hair. And I know that that is a metaphor that you're using with this book, and to talk about this, your journey through academia and working your way into leadership. So I want to talk a little bit about your book and the title of it, and this idea that hair in some way is significant when we are thinking about our place as Black women in professions, in the professional world. So talk a little bit about just the title and how you are kind of making that connection.
Yes. So I I start with literal a literal discussion about hair, and you're right, I moved to a more metaphorical discussion about it. And as I mentioned, when I thought of the first, it was going to be called Sister Locking Discourse.
Mm-hmm.
And then with my son, because he heard the word hair, he immediately thought that surely discourse would be spelled to signify the texture of a lot of black hair. So I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's a wonderful pun, Adam." So I went with that. But what I'm doing is women of my generation went through the stage where natural hair was considered unprofessional. It was
Mm-hmm.
considered unprofessional. When I was in high school, it was during the time when afros were just beginning to come out. And I was at a high school in southern Maryland. It was predominantly white high school. And then they made this rule all of a sudden. Now, the rule
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to have been race neutral. But you know how that works. Many times something is supposed to be race neutral, but it actually has adverse effects in terms of race. The rule was that you could wear your hair as long as you wanted to, as long as it flowed downward, but it couldn't flow outward or upward. Now, the
Wow.
only people at that school who had hair that was going outward or upward
And
were, of course, the black students. So they were trying to get at they were trying to get at the afros and all. And so what
yeah.
was going on in my own life was oh, I see they're showing this cartoon. Yes, the cartoon that you see on the screen is a cartoon that even now, when I'm going through TSA, they actually check your hair if it's twisted, which
Yeah.
surprised me. Kind of, it's
Mm-hmm.
embarrassing too with my colleagues, and they're not checking their hair, no matter how long their blonde ponytail is, but they want to check
Right.
my hair, and that's a
Yeah.
cartoon checking African American women's hair, as if the hair is carrying weapons,
Right.
um,
Mm-hmm.
as if the clips in the hair are gun clips or something. But
Right.
and so there's a lot with hair, and you would think that this is an old conversation, but it's not. In Columbus, Ohio, where I live, they just passed a, a legislative act in 2021, last year, and it's called the
Mm-hmm.
CROWN Act. And it
Mm.
says that you cannot discriminate against people who are wearing their natural hair. So, it's amazing that during this time that you still needed legislation saying that. So
Hmm.
at first I start off with hair, literal hair, and what was happening is I was teaching all of these works by African American women writers, and they were praising our natural hair and the coarseness of it all. Um,
Mhm.
they were like Intozaki Shange was writing a book called Nappy Edges, and Lucille
Mhm.
Clifton, the poet, was writing poems homage to my hair, and
Mhm.
lines like hair is as tasty on your tongue as good greens, black man. And so I was teaching all of this praising of hair, and
Yeah.
and yet I was wearing a perm, and so that got to me. And then I said, well, I
Mhm.
need to, and I
Mhm.
started on my hair and everything. But the book moves from that literal discussion of hair into a more metaphorical discussion because I'm really talking about new growth. One of the things you worry about when you decide to wear your natural hair is what are you going to do with your new growth?
Yeah.
Because that's part of the hair that is not as tamed, or
Right.
it hasn't been relaxed, or it
Yeah.
hasn't in any way. So what are you going to do with this new growth? So my book is really about the new growth that we as African American women in our professions, be it in the academy or in the corporate world, how we have to what we have to do to advance ourselves in male dominated spaces, or
Mhm.
what we as people of color have to do to advance ourselves in white dominant spaces. How do we
Mhm.
deal with growth? How do we make it to the next level? So
Yeah.
really interested in us getting to a place where we too can call the shots, where we don't have to be told what's professional, that our
Mhm.
bodies are not professional, because that's the
Yeah.
larger conversation. It's beyond hair. And
Mhm.
say at the beginning that one of your favorite authors is Toni Morrison. She's one of my favorite authors too. She
Yeah.
has a sentence, I think it's in Beloved, that says that the definitions belong to the
The
definers. And
definer. Yep.
yes, yes. So that my point is, why can't we decide what is professional?
Right.
Um, we were denigrated for the size of our lips, the size of our hips, everything about our bodies were
Yeah.
devalued. And it is really hard when you're in these places where you're the only person who looks a certain way, because
Mhm.
bring to the table all of these stereotypes. So there you are sitting and you're fighting stereotypes by your very physical presence, not even to
Yeah.
mention before you open your mouth.
Mercy. So talk to me about that moment when okay, first, let me back up. Talk to
Hmm.
me about the decision to perm your hair. Was that particularly because you knew to wear your hair in a natural state would be unacceptable? Was that a conscious
That's
decision?
Yes, that's a good question, because by the time I got to college, of course, in college it was okay to wear an afro, and I can still see my roommate getting up every morning and patting down her afro and everything. And when you're a student, you have more freedom
Yeah.
that way. That was fine, but then I switched back to perms when I went to graduate school,
Hmm.
and I think that showed my unease in some way. And
Hmm.
also, it's a lot of work to work with natural
Hmm.
hair, and
Yeah.
I have studying to do, and
Yeah.
so yes, I then I permed my hair, and definitely when I took my first job, my hair was permed, and I kept it permed until once I was promoted to full professor. And I was promoted to
Mm,
full professor. That's the top of the ladder. I said, listen, if I can't change my hair now, when can I do it? And just when I thought about, well, let me go natural, then they asked me to be the chair of a department. It was women's studies at the time. And I said, what do I do now? But I said, I'm going to press forward. I should be able to do, if I'm in a department that's talking about all this empowerment, and these undergraduate students are making their hair purple and pink and everything else, I should be able to
right.
make hair natural. And so, like I said, by this time I was teaching. I had taught all of these African American women writers, and I didn't want there to be a slippage between what I was teaching and what I was actually doing in my own life. And by that time, other women in the academy were wearing their hair in natural hairstyles. And indeed, I think in the academy, in higher education, in academia, we were probably ahead of the corporate world as far as
Yeah.
the way we wanted to wear our hair.
Yes, yes. So interesting because it's easy to dismiss this conversation about hair as something that's trivial. Like, what difference does it make what's going on with your hair? But what's clear is that it's so much about your identity and how people receive you. And
Hmm.
so we don't know, we can only guess whether or not you would have been received in the same way had you entered into your first professional position with natural hair, whether or not it would have been more difficult to move through the ranks, etc. And it's interesting also that you waited until you were fully established in your position. You had proven yourself, so to speak, in other areas so that this decision to change your hair should be less of an issue because they already knew who you were. Yet, what's interesting is that if they didn't know who you were, it may have been something that would have prevented you from ever even stepping in or certainly moving forward. Um, and so, do you agree? Before I move on to my
Yeah,
question, would you say that's true?
I agree.
Yeah.
Although I would have stepped forward. I stepped forward for the people who were following me too, because if they
Hmm.
could see a senior woman who was
Hmm.
wearing her hair however she wanted to wear her hair, then they would know that they would not be discriminated against because of that. I mean,
Hmm.
some people have to lead the way,
Yeah.
and and some people have fewer risks to take when they lead the
Yeah.
way. So if I'm a full professor, I didn't have any
Mm,
risk. And
yeah.
so it's very important that I do that in order to help that assistant professor who was at risk.
Got
So
you.
I was always thinking about those who were going to come after me.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. Okay, so now my question is, so you decide to do it. What was the response? Was there any pushback or were there little snide comments? I mean, maybe they couldn't take your job away, but was there some kind of repercussions when you did make that move?
No, because I was out front with it. And here's what I mean by that. When I first did it as chair of women's studies, and I was asked what kinds of things at the end of the year, what kinds of things were the most important to me? How did I manage all these crises? What was on my mind? And I wrote back in an editorial. I said, none of those things were on my mind. The only thing on my mind was what to do with my hair. And so I did it up front. And then when I was running for chair of the English department, and by the way, at that time it was the largest department of English in the country, it had 110 tenure track and tenured faculty members. And we have elections where you have the primary and then the final election. And I was running against two other women, So one of us was going to be the first woman to ever chair that department that had started in the 1880s. The woman before
Wow.
me, when she got up and gave her speech, she looked at her colleagues and she said, I know that you never expected to have a chair who has braces on her teeth, because she as an older person had decided to get braces. Okay.
Mhm.
I got up right after her and I said, I know, and I'm talking to an all white, when I said 110, I'm talking to all my white colleagues. There was one African American in that audience at the time. And I said, I know you did not expect to have a chair who would have her hair locked, but
Hmm.
this is the chair, the would-be chair who's standing in front of you. So I dealt with it up front. Some things you put
Yeah.
it out there and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the response, did they just kind of laugh it off? No one ever criticized?
I won the election. And 4 years later, when I was re-elected, I got all but one vote. So
Period. Nothing more to be said then.
but
I
I
love that.
lived I lived to see the day in the academy where there were other women. We had a dean of students, and she was over all the 65,000 students on campus, and she cut her hair really, really short, in a short, very short afro, and so
Hmm.
is that you do your work, and regardless of how you wear your hair, um,
Hmm.
that should not be the issue.
And and because you demonstrated that, they should see that that's true and not be as concerned about those things when the next person comes along. So that's awesome that you did that.
I mean,
So
they
we
just
are.
aren't used to having African American women in the room. The play Hamilton
Mhm.
talks about how you have to be in the room where it happens. Well,
Yes.
they had all these pictures on the wall. They weren't any pictures of African American women, so they didn't know what to expect. I didn't look like their wives or anything, so
Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
That's awesome. We are almost out of time already, and I feel like there's so much more that we could say. But you talk about leading the way and thinking about those who will come after you. What
Yes.
advice would you give then to Black women who are needing to figure out how to balance life, personal life and work life, concerned about how, being seen as a professional, being able to operate in those spaces and being respected for the work that they do and what they bring, regardless of how they look. How do we do that? What's the Black girl magic, Dr. Lee, that you can share with the rest of us and say, here's what you do to make it work?
Well, one thing I think you need to understand what it is that your job expects, and you need to have a network of mentors. You don't want to have just one mentor, because one person may not give you all the advice that you need. So, and you need to have mentors who are different ages too. You need some senior, you need some peers. You
Mhm.
should have mentors of different races too. You
Mm.
want to be very diverse in your whole
Mhm.
outlook. And I think I have a very diverse, inclusive outlook because I've traveled so many places in the world. So you want to have a network of mentors, of people that trust and people who believe in you, so that you're hearing the right voices. And you want to have things that anchor your life. Make sure your life is anchored in something. Make sure you
Mhm.
know what principles you are living for,
Mhm.
and then you'll be able to stand, and to stand strong, and don't
So
let
good.
others you.
I love
So
it. Yeah. I thank you so much for being one of those people in my own life who I have looked up to and admired, and being inspired by what you have been able to accomplish. And I know others would agree that having people like you to lead the way, to pave the way, can go really far. At the beginning of the show, I asked everyone to put in the comments some Black woman that you admire or look up to. And I would love for you all to put in the comments the names of those women in your own lives that have been that for you. And I just want to thank you, Dr. Lee, for your work. Thank you for your, inspiring and motivating us. Really quickly, just tell everyone how we can get a hold of Sister Locking Discourse.
Oh, okay. My website is Dr. Valerie Lee.com, and you can get it on Amazon, or you can get it from the publisher, the State University of New York Press, and you can buy it at many different bookstores, Barnes and Noble. But if you go to my website, drvalerielee.com. I hope I got that right.
We'll put it in the comments so they can get it. And
Yeah.
definitely go and grab the book. It's really interesting. It's you all have heard her, so you can imagine how the book will be, and I think you will definitely be inspired as you're reading it. So again, thank you, Dr. Lee, for being here. Thank you for the work that you've done, and for sharing all of your wisdom with us today.
Thank you. I've
And now
enjoyed
we're
my
going.
time.
Awesome. So great. Thank you. So real quick before we go, we're going to go move to our scripture for today. And it comes from Proverbs 31, as you might imagine, very appropriate for today. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. And I feel like this is so appropriate for our guest today because she is charming and beautiful, but she's also super smart. And she has accomplished so much in her career that I think we can all look at as an example of Black girl magic, yes, but it's clear that it's not just about one person doing it all in their strength and in their power, but rather her belief in God, her faith, her family, her community is what allowed her to thrive. And so let that be motivation for us as well as we try to strike that balance between our work and our family and all the responsibilities. It's not meant for us to do it alone. So let's reach out and take advantage of the resources and the people in our lives who are there to help us, and know that you can do whatever it is that God has purposed you to do. I'm so excited for you all to join us the rest of this month as we continue having these inspiring conversations. I have a lineup of fantastic ladies for us to meet and learn more about. And next week is no exception. We will have with us Chef Cynthia Paya, who will talk to us about the work that she is doing. So amazing, as you can imagine. Healthy living, healthy foods, but she has a whole line of products and she's doing a really new thing. So I will not do it injustice here now to explain. You will have to tune in next week to have her share with us all that she's doing. And we're going to continue to be empowered and motivated by these Black women who indeed have the magic. So I hope you'll join us, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.
Hey girl, join me all this month as we celebrate Black History Month and Black Girl Magic. We have a full lineup of amazing women who are making their way in the world. Be inspired by their magic. Join us Saturdays at 5 on Facebook Live.